I'm curious, like, what's your like leadership style? How do you think about managing a big sales team? You mentioned Pendo is sort of like the biggest team you've ever, managed. And I assume, were you managing managers? Like, was it that
Yeah.
sort of level? Yeah, yeah. Like, how do you think about inspiring a bigger sales team when you yourself can't be involved in every single deal? Like, how do you think about that challenge?
Well, first of all, I would say it is very different company to company. And any CRO that tells you they've got a playbook that's like plug and play from one place to another, I would say is just full of shit. Because I just fundamentally don't believe that that's how it works. So there's even when I think about my management style at Pendo, I think it's different in a lot of ways to how I approach the role at Walnut and kind of even though the team sizes are similar or the scope might be broader today, probably to me the most important thing I think a lot about strengths based leadership. So how do you figure out every individual has a unique set of things that they're really good at, or I call them superpowers. Like there is something, and just about anyone on your team, if they legitimately want to be there and have some sort of buy into the business, like there is something or multiple things that they're really good at. And the flip side is there are some things that they are not good at. And I think us, specifically those of us that came up in the old days of sales leadership, like we were taught so hard to like harp on everything that's broken, everything that doesn't work, to criticize and critique everything that goes wrong in a sales process. Even back before we had call recording and all the different AI ways to power it, like we were poking in at all of the things that might be making, that rep a D player versus a C player or a C versus a B, like all of the way up. And I think if we can flip that on its head, and of course you've got to be willing to give critical feedback, challenging feedback, but if you can identify, like, okay, at the end of the day, like what is it about this individual that they're uniquely skilled for? They're uniquely set up to be successful. That usually also ties into having some sort of understanding of what they care about on a personal level. Of course, career ambitions, like what they're working towards, but you've got to know what they ultimately want to accomplish and what really matters and drives them. And if you can connect that into some of the things that they're good at and then figure out how to double down there, then I think that's going to waterfall whether you are leading a sales organization of 8 or whether you're leading a revenue team of 80. There's layers of that all along the way. And of course, the larger the organization, you have to figure out how to tap into vision and inspiration and some of the big picture pieces without having the same depth of personal relationships. And you're certainly not in every deal, and you're certainly not in the nuance of the business the same way that you are if you're managing a team of 6 reps directly. But I think that the same skill sets and the same values really still pervade the entire way up in terms of like that strengths based focus and figuring out how do you unlock greatness at every layer of the organization.
I love that idea of focusing on people's strengths. I mean, I think what's so surprising to me about just like sales rep persona is there's so many different styles of sales reps who are successful, right? There's like the big personalities who are talkers and can just like kind of get it done all on a call without like doing all of the like hardworking activity follow up. And then there's the ones who maybe like don't sound as good on a call or like maybe not as charismatic, but then like get it done just through like really rigorous process and sort of being maybe more like academic in their sales process. And so, yeah, I don't know, the psychology of a sales rep is so interesting because I've seen both be really, really successful.
It is so fascinating. One of the things that I do today at Walnut is I try to get 15 minutes with every new customer that signs on with us. They don't always take me up on it, but I offer a conversation where part of it's just welcome to the fam. Really, what a privilege it is to have an opportunity to work with you. But then I ask for some feedback. Hey, would love to know what stood out in the sales process. You'd be amazed. People will give you, much more they've already bought from you. So if there was something that a rep did that got under their skin or they didn't like, or they didn't think was very well executed, they will also, share that piece of feedback. But the thing that, to your point, so interesting, you will hear very, very different things. Like the thing that this person loved about Audie is very different than something that so-and-so loved about Leslie. Like very different approaches, very different styles. But for whatever reason, like part of why they won the deal is because, oh man, I loved my rep, man. I just loved working with this person. They did very, very night and day approaches, but trying to then marry those two and figure out, okay, how do we build a repeatable process that is scalable, but then also allow reps to really flourish and do the things that they're great at? It's a hard balance for sure.
And I'm curious, like how does that impact hiring, like hiring AEs? Because you can have two very different types of AEs that are both successful, but like, what are the through lines? Like when you're looking at hiring, sales reps, like what are the things you're looking for that, regardless of those different approaches that you're sort of prioritizing, to bring them into Walnut?
Yeah, for sure. And that does vary a bit depending on the segment that we're talking about, because we have both an SMB motion that's much more transactional, and we've got a pretty robust enterprise motion as well. So obviously different skill sets, and even just the ability to work long-term customer relationships is important in enterprise, not important in SMB. So there's some of those nuances for sure that changes. To me, the one thing that's foundational for any sales rep that has to be there is intellectual curiosity, like someone that is genuinely curious about other people and about business. I don't think you can fake that. I don't think that you can teach that. If this is someone that doesn't read books or Google things or listens to podcasts or get up and watch CNBC, I don't know, there's got to be something where they're just a little bit wired for business. And I think that's even more important in a startup where things move fast, things are changing fast. Like you just have to learn pretty quickly. And I don't think there's any amount of structure that you can put in place as a leader, certainly as a frontline leader, to force that element of learning. So there just has to be intellectual curiosity. And I think coupled with that, they've got to be good listeners. So curious people tend to ask good questions, but then do they listen and digest the information? If they can do those two things, and they can probably learn just about any product, they can certainly learn most personas, most product. Like if those two things are there, if they're not curious or they're not good listeners, like it's just really hard to come back from that.
And it's what makes them like a good consultative seller too,
Yeah.
like actually listening to the problems, anchoring on, whatever the customer's telling you, and hopefully anchoring and recommending an authentic solution that's actually going to, help them reach their goals. So yeah, very, very important. And I think regardless of the segment.
I was about to say, and think about like whether we're talking about a 5K inbound transactional deal that's a really small company, or a 500K enterprise deal. Like that same skill set is needed on both. Like it may manifest itself differently in a one call close versus a 12-month sales cycle, but that level of curiosity, pattern matching, building different relationships with different people, like that matters through both of those. And the dream is you want to hire someone relatively junior that you can then, grow into the next segment, or the next leader. And like, that's obviously what we're all hoping for and working for.